Hello, ancient American history fans. Today, let's talk about the demise of the Inca Empire. It was an empire of 10 million people, and it covered an area of 2 million square kilometers. It was complex, and the reasons for its destruction were also complex. Now, I think there are many factors that went into it, but today we're going to talk about three main factors. One of them is the political structure of the Inca Empire. A second one is the disconnect culturally between Inca and Spanish behavior. And then third, most importantly, are the infectious diseases. All three of those factors were present at the fateful day when Pizarro met Atahualpa. Pizarro and Atahualpa met in 1532 in the city of Cajamarca. Cajamarca is a city in modern-day Peru in the northern Andes Mountains, and it sits at about 9,000 feet above sea level. Atahualpa was headed back to Cusco after a successful campaign conquering the area around Quito, Ecuador. He was going back to face his brother. Pizarro had just landed on the coast and marched his men all the way up the Andes to 9,000 feet above sea level. Both men were aware of each other, and they had significant reconnaissance about each other and their forces. But both men had a very different idea about how their first meeting was going to go. Atahualpa was headed back to Cusco to confront his brother Huascar. Their father, Huayna Capac, had suddenly died of smallpox, and it threw the empire into chaos. There wasn't a named heir, and these two men were going to fight to be the heir apparent. In fact, tens of thousands of people across the empire were dying of infectious diseases. There is that disease factor. Now, Huascar was coming out of Cusco with his own army to meet Atahualpa. So, an incredible civil war was brewing, and there's the Inca political factor again. Atahualpa had bigger fish to fry. He really wasn't worried about this small troop of hairy men climbing up the Andes. His army was over 100,000 people. Pizarro's perspective was very different. He had a blueprint. He had that example of Cortez who took over the Aztec Empire. Cortez captured Montezuma, and with it, he controlled the entire empire, at least for a time. And Pizarro decided he would do exactly that. So his plan was to capture the Sapa Inca. Now, the Sapa Inca was an untouchable, unquestionable, all-powerful ruler, and everybody had to do what he said. And that had been the status quo for generations. No one would ever dare touch the Sapa Inca. But Pizarro did exactly that. The night before their meeting, Pizarro sent some of his officers to go up to Atahualpa's camp and invite him to meet Pizarro. One of those officers was Hernando de Soto, the same one that would wreak havoc through North America later. And he was smart, and he did some horse tricks for Atahualpa, kind of to entertain him. And Atahualpa loved it. In fact, he was probably thinking, boy, tomorrow, those weird, wonderful llamas are going to be mine. He marched his army to the edge of Cajamarca the next day, but he only entered the city with his own personal guard and the pageantry of the entry of the Sapa Inca. He was absolutely sure that no one would have the incivility to attack the Sapa Inca himself, but that's where that cultural disconnect comes in. The Spanish didn't follow those rules, and Pizarro did exactly that. He captured him. Once Pizarro had Atahualpa prisoner, he controlled the entire empire. He kept him for over a year, asking him to bring gold and silver, which he did, but more importantly, collecting reconnaissance on the empire. All the while, Inca political structure and command structure was crumbling, and European infectious diseases were spreading across the land. Pizarro learned that only a member of the Inca royal family could become the Sapa Inca. So he took Huascar's younger brother, a man named Manco Inca, and set him up as the next Sapa Inca after he killed Atahualpa. Huascar, by the way, was murdered by Atahualpa's generals on his way down to Cajamarca to meet with Pizarro. Atahualpa didn't want that to happen. He could get outbid and he could become the Sapa Inca. So in the end, it was Manco Inca, and he was now a puppet of the Spanish crown. With Manco Inca at his side, Pizarro walked into Cusco unopposed and took over. Cusco was more than just the capital of the Inca Empire. It was the spiritual heart, or as they said, navel. Cusco actually means the navel, and that's where all of their ancestral mummies were kept. Manco Inca eventually escaped and led a rebellion against the Spanish. But it was too late. He was eventually hunted down in his hideout in the Amazon, a city called Vilcabamba, and killed. That really ended the military capacity of the Inca. But the question still remained, how did the other 10 million people just give up? Well, that's where the diseases really came into play. A dozen infectious diseases accompanied the Spanish to the New World. Across the Andes, every community had thousands of people that were sick and dying. And here's the key factor. The Inca did not consider sickness as a physical ailment. Instead, they saw it as a spiritual attack, either by malevolent spirits, or if everybody got sick, it meant that the gods were displeased with them. And right at this same time, the Spanish had priests going through all these communities, talking about Christianity and promising them that their sickness would end if they just converted to Christianity. So it wasn't just about a military conquest. It was hearts and minds. The Inca people felt that their gods had abandoned them, so they were spiritually demoralized. So, a final question. If the Spanish hadn't shown up, would the Inca Empire have continued? Well, I think the answer is almost certainly yes. Without the Spanish coming in with all their infectious diseases and changed ways, I think the Inca Empire would have gone on for centuries. Unlike the Aztec Empire, the Inca Empire was built on benefits for its people, not fear. Every community in the Inca Empire got infrastructure. They got things like roads and, more importantly, storage houses full of food. All 10 million people across the empire never went hungry. The Inca did something that no other society has ever been able to do. They eradicated hunger. But the Spanish invasion stopped all of that. And again, their demise was really about three main factors. Part one, Pizarro's swift and smart takeover of the entire empire just by capturing Atahualpa. Two, the disconnect between these two cultures. The Inca really did not expect the tactics that the Spanish would be using. And third, most importantly, the infectious diseases, which not just killed people, but spiritually demoralized everyone to the point where they didn't fight back and they willingly became Christianized. If you like what I had to say there, maybe you'd like to see some of my other videos. Here are two right here you might be interested in. Give them a try.